talked a few weeks ago about kind of the structure and the audience and the purpose of the session, and wanting to focus on the impact of digital transformation on business transformation, and so that's kind of the orientation toward it. It's pre-recorded. I think we talked, Shannon, about having a few maybe questions. I actually don't recall if we got to that place.
I think
Matt, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, since it was an on-demand, I don't think we were going to have any Q&A at the end, right? But we would have Matt kind of talk through a couple of slides at the end around stage.
Right, and we can come back and talk about this after we walk through the slides. But to bookend it with Matt or Rob would make a lot of sense as well. That way, it's clearly a sage event with Forrester as the invited speaker. And we talked about roughly 30 minutes, might be a little longer, but I think in general these on-demand webinars or live webinars for that matter, benefit from as much energy as we can give them, and I'll certainly do that when presenting, but sometimes shorter is better than longer. So we want to prioritize the things that are most interesting to you and most relevant to where you will jump in for connection through to your capabilities and perspectives and offerings. And that means that not all slides are created equal. It also might mean that there are slides we don't want, and there may be there may be gaps that we want to plug. So as we're going through these slides, and I wasn't going to pitch them now, I was just going to walk everybody through them. We can pause and talk about any of them that you want to, but we can also come back and make changes between now and next week. And I can actually turn some things around today if needed, if we want to do a quick turnaround.
Okay,
so that's my understanding. Does that sound right?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, great. So let's not do presenter mode. Everybody's the PowerPoint at this point. Let's do the not the slide sorter, but look through the slides one at a time. Maybe some builds here that we don't need to bother with right now. So digital transformation unlocks business opportunity, and I believe that profoundly, just to make it clear that this is why I'm in the job I'm in. Technology, I love technology, but I love much more understanding the impact of technology on the world, on people, and on business, which is why I've been at Forrester for 21 years, because it's always changing and it's always advancing, and sometimes it's needing to overcome challenges and patterns of thought and investment that people are missing. And so one of the big patterns of thought that we've got some gaps on is people in IT tend to know that without big investments in the operational technologies and systems, the systems of record, the core systems, transaction systems, data systems, you can't actually deliver the digital performance, the digital experience, the digital engagement that the customers want, B2B customers and consumers as well. So there's an underinvestment in operations is the way I would characterize that. So we use this deck to kind of tee that up a little bit and try to create some understanding and some collective thinking about why it's important to do that. So that's the title. I often use a slide like slide 3 to remind everybody that the technology we use every day is astounding. This happens to be an image from an iPhone in a river in Canada that actually my wife took last summer. But if you think about the technology behind this that allows you to see it and share it and scale it and size it, and it's just a phenomenal amount of technology to get this very simple, beautiful, or at least interesting, I hope, visual experience. I don't always use that, and for this webinar that might be a little bit too much because I don't have the audience to sort of respond to, but when I present live, I often use something like this to kind of get everybody warmed up and thinking a little differently. And we have an agenda, so we can come back and decide if that makes sense or not. So we have an agenda. What is digital transformation? A lot of times people they bring, of course, their own perspective, and we try to create some common ground here. And then we walk through the major impact, which is digital rewrites the rules of business. This is actually the summary, if you like, of about, I'd call it 15 years of research into the impact impact of technology on business. And we had a pretty major breakthrough a couple of years ago when we realized that treating innovation and partnering or ecosystems and operations and front-end experiences separately was actually missing the point. The point is they all have to fit together. And so that's why we restructured our digital business analysis in this way. Nigel Fennick, Martin Gill did a lot of that work, and I came in and we put this together, the three of us. So then we also do data collection on digital transformation. It's actually a global survey. This is a sample of North American and European enterprise business and IT decision makers. And we published this report. It's an infographic that Martin actually blogged, I think, when you came across it. And just to simply stated, technological change dominates business thinking. And so this is a mixed response set. It's not just IT, it's not just business, it's both. And everybody agrees that technology is a huge, huge impact. But customer experiences, moving to slide 6, shape investments. So when you ask that same panel, but trim it down a little bit and ask about where people are investing, they're investing in customer engagement. And so there's a lot of front-end pull through the motivating businesses to think differently about what they have to do. The bar is set by what customers experience, not by the operations. Slide 7 we may not want to use here because we can also use slide 8 to set it up. But oftentimes people are intrigued by Amazon, they're afraid of Amazon, and Jeff Bezos has a very simple message that he's been saying really since the beginning in his public earnings announcements. He says the same thing over and over and over again every year, and this is from the 2017 letter that you want to be customer obsessed, not competitor obsessed. So again, this tees up the fact that customers will pull you along if you let them. If you don't observe and follow what their needs are, then you're going to fall behind. So this is the kind of compelling motivation to transform is, yes, disruption, but also customers. Slide 8 then is a different way to say that the big impact of technology in people's lives, whether it's in business or at home, is the digital as you shorten the distance between what they want and what you get. There's a lot more direct engagement, a lot more self-service. Then slide 9 is sort of a summary of the impacts of what successful digital businesses do. They focus on customers, they generate new revenue, they optimize operations, and they invent new business models. And we could structure an entire deck around this, but we choose not to. Instead, we use it to tee up what is digital transformation, which is on slide 10. So this is a formal definition, and frankly, I tend to gloss over it a little bit because to me, digital transformation means using technology to improve customer outcomes and improve business agility. That's how I think about it. So if you agree with those words, I'd be happy to simplify and change that. But this is our formal definition. And then, again, I don't know if we need this, but I think it might be helpful. This is Nigel Fennick's and the key message very often, which is that if you put racing stripes on an old buggy, that does not make it a racing car. And we call that a bolt-on transformation strategy on slide 12. And it does not go very far to improving what a company can do. In other words, it's just putting a fancy new face on perhaps a poorly managed operation or capability. And so it's great, it's important, it's a good first step, but it's not enough. You have to go farther. And then that tees up the bigger picture of digital transformation, which we use slide 13 to tee up that next section. So digital rewrites the rules of business. This then is a bit of an iconic graphic. The first rule, the one we always lead with, because of our orientation toward customers, is digital customer experience, to deliver experiences that are easy, effective, and emotional. And I can spend time here, but usually I move to an example. This happens to be, there's lots of examples we could actually pull in here right now in Europe because of the PSD2 change. But this is one that Yorkshire Bank, Clydesdale Bank created a subsidiary, and they essentially put a new front end on their existing product line to do a stream-based, a feed-based engagement with your financial transactions across all products, across checking, credit card, current account, mortgage or loan, which has just a really nice story. But there are these massive technical implications, and we can get a little bogged down in slide 16, but for our purposes, we'll probably move through it pretty quickly. That you've got to invest in an experienced architecture, not just a point solution for marketing, say, or commerce. You're going to need to focus on customer data, so dynamic customer profile that allows you to personalize. That's just as true of B2B as it is in B2C. The execution becomes journey-centric, not channel-centric. So you're not organizing and executing by your digital channel separate from your offline channel. You really need the channels to be unified because customers don't limit themselves to a single channel. And then lastly, and I think very importantly, and ties into, I think, some of your energy, is around being insights-driven, not just data-driven. So you need to use insights to drive action, that is real-time action, as well as decision-making. We have a whole stream of research on that I was actually part of called, it's called Insights-Driven Business. The second rule is around digital operations, and this is a pretty blunt statement here, that you focus operations on things customers value, because if you don't see the immediate business impact on what you're doing, then you're probably you should probably ask yourself whether or not it's worth doing. Certainly, you should ask yourself whether it's worth doing alone, or you should bring somebody in to help you with it. And so, a way to indicate that, and I think we will spend some time on this slide, in slide 18, is to look at which business processes firms are transforming. And this is that same data set, and it shows it by industry group, and it shows it by function. And you can see that the red means more companies are transforming that process, and blue means fewer companies, so it's a heat map. And you see that IT is getting the most transformation by the most companies, but at the top of the chart with marketing, sales, and customer service, there's a very high level of transformation going on. But there are hotspots throughout. So, for example, the financial services insurance industries has a big transformation going on in their financial systems. It's also true in media. 30% of media companies are transforming their financials. I'm sorry, did I get that wrong? It's 25%. I better double check that data. I may have the wrong row here. I better look at this. And sorry about that. And then manufacturing, of course, there's transformation going on. So the point being that it's not just a front end or just a single process. It's all processes, and it will vary by your industry. But in every sector, there's transformation going on in operations, not just in front end work. So there are technical implications to this. You want technology platforms with reusable data and assets. You want to take advantage of automation, both digital process automation, which is something that my colleague Rob Koplowitz is very hot on right now. So think about a very wide set of integrations that you need to support lots and lots of delivery. So this is where ERP, I think, will play a major role, but also robotic process automation. Maybe I'll expand this list in that way. Robotic process automation is very often about paper-based processes becoming automated. Consolidated infrastructure and applications. You can't have multiple instances of your core systems. That just leads to inability to move forward. And then systems of insight that actually span the front and the back of the organization that bring together multiple data sets inside the company to drive an understanding. These are very complex, expensive, I won't probably say expensive, but very complex things to accomplish. The next rule is digital ecosystems, and this is very much about building platforms and partnerships to accelerate and scale. Everybody wants to build an ecosystem. I don't like that term, frankly. I just finished a report called Building a Platform Business. Just a pause here. And in that research, we talked to 33 founders and executives of platform businesses, and not a single one of them used the word ecosystem when I asked them to tell me the origin story. I said, I had one question for these people. Tell me the story. Tell me how you started and got to where you are. Nobody used the word ecosystem. They all used the word customer and supplier and partner. Anyway, I won't go there here, but this is a very important point, and I just have a couple of quick examples of it. Partly because it does tie in, I think, to your value proposition. That every firm needs co-innovation partners. So you want to find partners that will solve problems for you and then integrate with those partners through software. develop skills to become a really good partner. It's not a supplier-customer relationship often, but a much more collective, shared outcome kind of relationship. And then, of course, partnering means integration, which means APIs is critical. And then I have an example here of a startup called LabViva. Try to find a better image of their logo. That's helping pharmaceutical companies with better tools for scientists and for procurement. So pharma companies buy a lot of chemicals in the lab, and scientists need to know which chemicals are being used with their laboratory notebooks, which is software. And procurement needs the ability to do direct procurement, to reorder, and to reorder on a schedule, and to order on demand. And so it's very hard to link a lot of chemical suppliers to their customers through these two windows, for scientists and for procurement. And this company, LabViva, is doing that in a very interesting way. The fourth rule is we call digital innovation, and the key point is to innovate at the intersection of experiences and operations. And this next one is a build slide on slide 24, where the 2080 rule comes in after I introduce the concept that you can make a certain amount of progress by focusing on the customer front end, but to make meaningful changes, you're going to have to also enhance your digital operations. And the combination of those, we call that digital innovation. And then the 80-20 rule is a reminder that it's a very much bigger commitment to do a product launch or a completely automated onboarding process or something that requires or omni-channel selling and commerce. You have to do a lot of work in operations and the back-end systems to support that. And so I could use Home Depot as an example, depending on who you think the audience is. It's a wonderful story that actually has public data and an 80-20 into it. I'll just quickly tell you that story, and you can see if it's a better example than Supply On. But Home Depot came out and said they were going to spend $300 million mobile enabling their stores. And they did it as part of an earnings announcement where they missed earnings. And 6 months later, they came back and said they're actually going to spend $1.5 billion because it turns out they needed to completely overhaul their distribution systems and infrastructure, because people don't want to order what's in the store. They want to order what's in the supply chain or the catalog, and they want it delivered the next day. And so that's a very much more challenging and difficult, comprehensive transformation. That's a story I usually tell here, but I was thinking for your audience, it might also be good to talk about one of these B2B marketplaces that actually works. It's called Supply On. They've got thousands of suppliers to do direct procurement for major manufacturers. They have a foundation in Europe, of course, but they also have presence in North America and in Europe. And then we close with how to get started, and this is a fairly comprehensive section because I want to give people some guidance here. So slide 27 is the challenges, and we might simplify this a little bit, but there are lots of challenges, including legacy applications, siloed organizations, stovepipe technology stacks, lack of ownership, misaligned metrics. But transformation is a team sport. The reason on slide 28 that people can understand that is that everybody needs to be focused on customers. That's what businesses do. On slide 29, we talk about how transformation is being led. This is back to our data set, and the sort of headline I chose to put here is that it can be led by any executive, but more firms put the CIO in charge. In other words, in more companies, the technology leader is the spearhead, not the only executive, but the guiding executive for transformation. In slide 30, we talk about the challenges, being security, tech strategy, culture, and lack of skills. And then slide 31 is that people are investing in exactly those same things in actions they're taking to transform. So these are things you need to also do. I could call out, by the way, I'm going to pause here, slide 31. I could call out specific line items here, specific bars, and maybe I can do it myself, of course, but maybe you can help me identify several is it's kind of a closing slide. We have an ability to help assess maturity, but it's important for people to kind of take inventory and see where they are. They need to then prioritize their initiatives on the business value and the customer benefit both. And then they need to build a two-phase roadmap. There are things they can do more immediately by extending what they have, but then there are also these major platform investments that are going to be multi-stage, multi-year, large-scale investments that they're going to have to make. And it's a bit of a teaser, because I obviously don't bring a lot of information about these things, but in point of fact, this is guidance we use this all the time in our transformation workshops of how we structure the day and the engagement. And that's slide 33 is the last slide.
Great.
So I'm certainly very happy to take feedback right now, anything that's off top of mind. And then, of course, we also have a few minutes, a few days to get this right.
Sure. Matt or either one, do you guys have any feedback or comments on what's presented or some of the things that Ted could kind of focus on?
This is Matt. No, I don't think so. I guess obviously we don't see our slide deck yet. And I hope to have a connection with Rob prior to this about how we're going to tie our content in, right? So that because when I see slide decks like this, I kind of think cutting edge, right? And when regardless of how exceptional an ERP system is, I look at like, build an ERP, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how do we transition to the stage portion? Because no, I like this content. I think, especially this latter half, these latter handful of slides when you start to talk about focus on the customer and 29, CIO running the show, and that obviously ties into, okay, what are you going to implement? What are you going to put in place to make sure that you can get to this level of proficiency, I guess, in the digital transformation. So I think that tees us up well. It's just a matter of figuring out what that looks like.
Let me suggest something. So I'm getting some water. If there's any background noise. We have other data sets, maybe a lot more data sets on investments in software, for example. And I did not bring that data in. It's a different large-scale survey we do. But I could introduce a slide in the investment area that is more about that, at the systems level, if you like, and less about the kind of actions. And in that investment area, kind of on software, I have to tell you that the big one is in fact cloud. But when you start looking at the other kind of core systems, we're going to see a lot of the operational systems that, and I don't know if we call it ERP, but there's going to be indications that there are investments going on. I haven't looked at that data in a while, so I don't want to promise that it's going to sell the story with as much energy as you would want. But it's possible I could use some data like that. I could also kind of swap out some slides. Like the Get Started is very kind of, process-centric right now. I could get much more explicit here on what you have to do to talk about these investments in core systems. So we have a picture we call that we use to introduce technology investments. That we have systems of engagement, systems of insight, systems of record, and we call them systems of automation. It's basically IoT. But that bigger systems level view often appeals to a technology executive because it reminds them that there are these major building blocks to the technical infrastructure. And then it's a fairly simple, next slide, if you like, that links the front end and the back end effectively. So you look at the experience layer, the CRM layer, the ERP layer, the financial systems, versus part of that. As a sort of a stack, if you like, of investments. So that might give us a little more direct connection. And the way I would tie it back in is through this linkage between
I like it. My first thought with it is, I think for Sage, I think it could do with some more of a bit of an industry focus in some areas, maybe. For enterprise management, we've got like 4 areas that we kind of focus on, which is manufacturing, distribution, process manufacturing, and services. So it would be nice if there was kind of anything related to those kind of areas somewhere in the deck. Like some of the examples, like the pharmaceutical, some of the examples aren't necessarily kind of focused towards some of the clients that we have. So it'll be good if there were possibly any kind of stats or kind of conversations about the areas that we specialize in.
So yeah, Shannon gave me that guidance as well, and I guess I hinted at it, but I didn't go directly at it. So to be more explicit there through the examples we choose, I also need to use examples that I'm familiar with. So that's something that we could spend a few minutes even now talking about. So I don't want to necessarily use your customers if it's inappropriate, but if it is appropriate, and you had a case study, for example, I'd be happy to start there and see where that takes us. The places where we have the most experience as a company are really in, when we talk about distribution, it's really about B2B selling. And so we could bring an example there. In manufacturing, a lot of what we do a lot of work with, we don't do a lot of work with process manufacturers, basically, long story short. Most of our work is with industrial, discrete.
I think that's okay, discrete. If there was anything around that kind of area, because that's still something that we do, even though I think when they say manufacturing, I say discrete manufacturing. So yeah, if there's any kind of examples or kind of focus towards that, that would be kind of quite useful.
Okay, let me revisit that. I'll do that later this afternoon, which will be perhaps when you're enjoying life instead of work, but maybe get a chance to take a look at it over the weekend or first thing Monday.
And then I guess that kind of speeds up the Home Depot example or the supply on example. Did anyone have any thoughts from the Sage side about which ones might be better?
They're actually both distribution stories, frankly. I didn't tell you the whole Home Depot story, but most of what they're investing in is distribution.
Okay, no, that's
they're building 2 gigantic facilities and overhauling the complete supply chain management capability in order to allow someone to get real-time visibility into what's in the supply chain. It's a massive, massive investment.
That sounds like a good example, actually. Even though it's not a Sage customer, I don't think it actually matters for this. I think we just need to kind of talk about some of the themes that some of the customers will probably be interested in. And if you're a distribution business, then obviously that example would be good. So I think I'll be happy with that.
Okay, is it worth doing a? I sometimes use Amazon for Business as a ecosystem example, and it's a scary one for a lot of manufacturers that sell product direct or through multi-tier distribution, but want to sell direct, and of course distributors as well. So that puts a little bit of kind of the carrot stick. It pumps up the stick a little bit. Would that be at all interesting? As a second example?
I'm not 100% sure on kind of maybe going on to the kind of, I don't know, I think maybe kind of just focusing more on the kind of just I wouldn't say old school distribution, but kind of the channels which maybe companies are used to, rather than getting too much into the kind of new areas, because I guess our business is built on we want that kind of distribution layer rather than just going direct. So
okay, all right,
that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
it does. I'll have to do a little searching for that.
Okay.
Internally, if you've got anything to point me toward, that'd be great as well. And then for manufacturing, sorry, go ahead.
This is Ido, and I wanted to give my feedback as well. And again, I just received this meeting invite this morning, so I don't have a ton of background into, the audience and, everything that surrounds this initiative. But, overall, I thought the presentation is really well organized. I like decks that, kind of are organized in a way that tell them what you are going to tell them, and tell them again, so it resonates. So this is, structured in that way, so that's why, I really liked it. I thought it quite compelling. To Matt's point earlier, I kind of felt the same thing at the beginning, but I thought, if we leverage the TEI study with Forrester that we did a couple years ago or a year ago, I think that could also tie in very nicely. It's probably overutilized to a certain extent, but there is a room to use that, and that will actually complement a lot. What you talk about digital transformation and ROI in that regard. So I thought we can use that, and really like when I'm looking at these slides, I like the ones that mostly I like the story slides obviously, but really thinking from NQL or lead gen perspective, to me, people would be mostly interested in some takeaway slides. So, slide 18, for example, that slide could actually be something that, an attendee would like to print out and go to their CEO and say, hey, you know what, this is what I learned, and, this is coming from Forrester as well, and I've been telling you this day in and day out, and here you go. We have to do this. So I'm looking for more slides like that, and more data points. I'm not sure if you have them, but any compelling, data that shows, listen, it's already here. The time to take an action has already passed. We have to do this now. We can't keep delaying this, and this is a strategic investment, as you were pointing out, and really build a solid foundation with numbers. Any data that supports that would be great, and ideally across industries from my perspective, because again, we have the core four that we talked about, but if we can distribute that across industries, we can even reach out to a larger audience.
Okay, that's great guidance. Thank you. So somebody send me the TEI study, because if it's appropriate, I can certainly bring in material from that. I don't have access to it myself.
I can give you that, Ted.
Stated kind of bluntly, if I may, there's a lot more hype than there is investment. So I am not personally terribly inclined to bring data that indicates too much desire and need, which is why we call the report the sorry state of digital transformation. The levels of investment are still across most companies very small. The reason I use the digital maturity at the very end is we actually have an entire focus on helping our clients based on where they are, and we are about to go out into field with this survey again to do a benchmark of digital maturity, and that will be extremely interesting for us across industries and geographies, and I can't wait to get that data, but that's 6 months away. We do, however, have data on the impact of technology on business and the fear of disruption. So we could create some urgency there, which is an attitudinal kind of urgency. Where we get into the investment levels, that's where things get really, well, not necessarily in support of your business, frankly. The biggest investments by far are in cloud. So if I put that slide up, that's going to divert attention from where you want it to. And part of me feels the need to do that, but also part of me feels the need to not overplay that as a singular area of focus, rather to focus on agility and operations. So that's kind of why I didn't bring that particular data set.
That makes sense. Do you have anything on ERP related investment
That's what I'll have to look for. I think we probably do, but I'm not close to that data myself, so I'm going to have to go find it.
Okay, because that kind of data will also allow us to nicely transition into what we want to talk about, or anything related to, I don't know, creating a single view of their entire business, like financials, accounting, supply chain, operations, and so on.
That's good guidance. Let me look. Okay, good.
That's my feedback. Really compelling, though. I like that.
This is very, very helpful, guidance. Thank you. All right. Well, I got some things to do. I will not get this turned back around today with this level of improvement. It'll have to happen over the weekend. So you should look for something from me by Sunday afternoon, my time.
Okay.
Is it possible
And then
to?
I guess,
Sorry, I was going to say, can I just make maybe one more point?
Sure.
I noticed there wasn't, I guess, much mention of sort of, I guess, data analytics and kind of predictive technology, which is kind of something that I guess with ERP it's supposed to kind of, intelligent or new types of ERP it's supposed to be quite a big deal for businesses. And I just wondered whether there was possible to kind of have any kind of mention of that side of digital transformation and how, the use of data is improved.
Absolutely. That's very, very possible. Got lots of data on that.
That'd be great if we could have that as well.
Yep, we'll do. This may this may drive us to restructure the storyline a little bit here to introduce some of this urgency data up front. And then we come back and revisit it in the last section. So let me get to work.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. And Shannon, keep me posted around the platform if you do want to run a test. But right now, everything's set for Tuesday. But we can, of course, talk on email if we have to on Monday.
Okay. Great.
Okay? All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Thanks, Ted. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all.
Bye.
Bye.